Michael with United Veterans Worldwide, excited today to meet with my new friend Elizabeth. Elizabeth and I found each other recently on Instagram, and I have absolutely enjoyed her content, specifically her positivity, her upbeat personality, her confidence in her body as she ages, and all of the positive messaging that she puts out daily in content, which is amazing, has really resonated with me emotionally and physically, and I couldn't wait to get her on this channel to kind of share with everybody else who she is and why she is who she is today. And so I want to introduce everybody to Elizabeth. Elizabeth, welcome.
Thank you, Michael. I am just thrilled to be here. And we really did just meet a couple weeks ago, started chatting, and I was like, yeah, let's do this thing. So here we are.
Well, I'm excited to take you back in time a little bit, Elizabeth, and I know that everybody has a unique story, and I like to treat each story as being sacred because your experiences are yours and they shape you into who you are today. And maybe you can walk us back a little bit and talk to us about some early experiences that you've had that have made you into who you are today and why.
Absolutely. So first of all, I do like to say, as far as when people see me sharing myself and talking about the workouts and the fitness and the mindset, I've always had an interest in health from a pretty young age. I grew up with we weren't so much fitness oriented, but just healthy, nutrition oriented family. Back in the 60s and 70s, when everybody was eating like Tang and Pop-Tarts, my mom was like going to this organic co-op and buying us, grass meat and veggies. So I did grow up pretty healthfully. I became a vegetarian around puberty. Did that for over 30 years. So I respect everybody's dietary choices, but I'm also super open about the fact that I'm a big meat eater now for the last 15 years. So but I respect everybody's choices. I really do believe in eating real food, though. That's where it starts. There's no magic shake, pill, or powder out there. So I had this wonderful, beautiful childhood, peppered with a few health issues like chronic cystic acne that started I don't think you and I talked about that before, but that started at puberty, and I struggled with actually for decades. So that was my ongoing health thing. Not so much. The weight wasn't a big thing for me. I've gained and lost weight, but that was nothing major. I went down the path everybody does. I always had this interest in health and nutrition and fitness, but I went down the path, college, job, get married, all of the things. And no shame, guilt, blame, or anything else. It was an unhealthy relationship that I stayed in for 25 years. And there are a lot of reasons people stay. It's not bad all the time. There were some really beautiful moments. You want to cling on to that. Also, it's what do people think? What is everyone going to think? I'm the good girl. I follow this path. You have kids that are in school. There are a lot of factors. Ultimately, it reached a point where it was so unhealthy that I had to leave. And I did it in a pretty bold, conversations didn't work. So I just left. It was premeditated, but it was a bold move. And I had at that point just started my brand, my social media presence. I went to, while I was still married, on my own, I didn't really have any support for this. So I cashed out the one bit of money that was in my name, which was a little 401k from a former employer that I'd done into an IRA rollover. And I cashed that out. I paid for my tuition for my first health coaching certification, and I bought a laptop. And so I started this little blog called, it was my name. It was Elizabeth Resnick, Holistic Health for Women Who Want to Feel Happy, Healthy, and Hot. And this was never about me calling myself happy, healthy, and hot. I was just I figured that's how we all want to feel.
Exactly.
It's mindset, nutrition, and fitness. And I like cute names, and I like happy names. I like catchy names. That keeps you on track. So it's really about feeling happy, healthy, and hot. And I eventually turned to Instagram, really just try to get people to my blog, but found out that I loved video and that Instagram was a great way to get my message out. And somehow along the way, as I was changing my Instagram handle, I became happy, healthy, and hot Elizabeth. But I realized that actually I do embody the brand. I need to be, I'm the billboard, I'm the presence, I'm the face, the voice. The brand really is me. So I stepped into, I mean, I was in the beginning kind of hiding behind a keyboard and pictures of, my recipes and things like that. And showing up on social media involves showing up bigger and bolder. And along the way, facing criticism, especially, from some people in my, who do you think you are doing? You're 49 years old. Like, and what do you think you're doing? And I got a lot of criticism, from people very close to me. Later down the road, from people the word talking behind my back, old friends, stuff like that. Ultimately, as my brand started to grow, you get the online, the haters, whatever you want to call it. And all of that has been an opportunity to learn and grow, to transcend, to know that I have a message. The more I do this, the more I show up. I mean, I was showing up to crickets for years. It took me 8 years to organically build an audience of 16,000 on Instagram. And I was thrilled because they were engaged and they're awesome and they're all still with me. And then as I started learning to let go of that judgment and that fear of what people were saying, and I mean, I had a little mantra that I said to myself when people would criticize me, people I knew, or, I'd say they can't take their eyes off of me. And I started embodying that, like, they can't take their eyes off of me. They may say they don't like what I'm saying, but they're listening. And I said that to myself. I didn't know why, but that gave me strength. That gave me courage. And so in November of 2023, it was November 2nd. It was the 8-year anniversary of my first blog post. And I was sitting in tears on my sofa with my dog because I was frustrated that my message wasn't getting out to more people. And I hadn't done what, here it was. I've been doing this for so long. And then a week later, I hit 17,000 and I thought, wow, what if I could somehow grow this audience to 20,000? Well, 6 weeks later, it was at 50,000. By this fall, it was 100,000. And they couldn't take their eyes off of me. So it's kind of crazy, but it really goes back to being your authentic self. And it's not that we need to air all of our dirty laundry, or seek attention, but it's about when you are true to yourself and your message and you believe in who you are and you show up that way, your light, the way you're shining is going to illuminate how some people feel about themselves. And if they're not happy with themselves, they're uncomfortable with themselves, that's when they might start throwing a little shade, but it's also going to illuminate the path for some other people to step up and follow their own dreams. And, I have this message that I've been saying, especially now as I'm campaigning for Maxim Cover Girl at the age of 58, campaigning with women in their 20s and 30s, I keep saying it's time to tell a new story about aging. And, I think the message, people see me parading around in a string bikini, which I love to do, but my message is it's not just about looking cute in a bikini. I like to wear a bikini because I feel good in my body. I feel strong. I feel confident. I feel energetic. But it's about deciding what your story is going to be. It's about saying, I don't need to listen to this idea that we need to cover up, shrink back, just sit around. I get to create a life that's meaningful to me. So whether it's, wearing a string bikini and running for Maxim Cover Girl, or it's, I have a friend, I have a friend in Philadelphia who started this amazing book club that has all these adventures, and she's grown it. They have over 1,000 members, and she's looking to recreate in other areas of the country. She's around my age. She's telling a new story about aging. She's creating these adventures and doing these things that nobody even thought of. She's doing something so unique, so it's I see so many men and women in my world that are telling their own story of what aging gets to look like. And it's not just about how you look. It's really about how you feel. But when you feel strong and confident in your body, that radiates out to everything else. I always talk about, building a strong core. Yeah, it's nice to look at, but when you have a strong core, you are strong at your core. You can withstand things. You can overcome. you're not going to crack and break. When stuff happens, you're going to, you know, maybe bend a little bit, but you're going to bounce right back because you're strong at your core.
Yeah. Elizabeth, I think that's a beautiful message. I've been taking some notes, so if you see my head go down here, I come up with my
Okay.
pen. You said at the very beginning, you said there's no magic pill. And
Yeah.
I second that because I'm into fitness, nutrition, mental and emotional health, right? There is no
Right.
magic pill. There are incremental steps that will put you on a different trajectory of where you want to be. If you want to be the 58-year-old who's sitting in a wheelchair, not moving because for the last 15 years, based on life trauma, pain, whatever, you decide you're never going to move again. Well, that's a different trajectory. Or you can take the trajectory of, I'm going to do what's best for me. I'm going to try to make incremental improvements, and suddenly you're on a different trajectory, and it's not even the same person. Another
Yeah.
piece is you said you took a bold move and took care of yourself out of an unhealthy relationship. Now, I don't know for this global audience that's watching today if there's someone that's in a difficult scenario, but it takes a bold person to look at their life and say, enough is enough. I've got to, for my own well-being, I've got to move on, even if it's been 25 years.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say to anybody, you know, and I would never tell anybody to leave a situation or stay. Like, obviously it's so individual for each person. But it's, you know, we stay in this, it's a comfortable pain that we're in because we know what it is. So it's an unknown, and then leaving is painful. It's hard, it's scary. And then you're going out into the unknown. And there are parts of me that thought once I made this big, bold move, everything in my life would be rainbows and unicorns and butterflies. And, you know, money falling from the sky and everything else. And I had to change who I was. So I made the bold move, which definitely took some change. But I had to keep showing up for myself. And it's not an overnight thing. And, you know, as we're saying, there's no magic pills, and we're talking about these little daily actions. I always say it's the small actions done consistently that compound over time to yield amazing results. And I had to keep showing up for myself. And it's, as you know, it's showing up for yourself when it's hard, showing up for yourself when you're scared, you know, going to the gym when it's 8 degrees out, or, you know, like I bundle up and I go out for a walk every morning, no matter what the weather is. And it's as much for my mental health as it is my physical health.
Yes.
And my emotional health. It's all of those things. It's just, this is how I show up for myself. And it's doing it on those days, the days you do it that it's hard to do, or it's not as much fun, or it's not as comfortable. I feel those are the days that actually mean the most, because that is also what's developing that strong core that, you know, it's those small actions, like, then you build this confidence in yourself.
Yeah, I love that. And thinking of this morning when I went in the gym, and I'd had a heater running for the last hour and a half, which my wife hates because it charges so much money just to run that heater in the garage.
Right.
And the temperature was still at 45 degrees, and I was like, ah, everything metal I touch is going to not be comfortable.
So cold.
And I had to question myself in that moment. And I'm like, Michael, the many things that you've had to deal with in life that have been hard, especially when we talk about mentally hard, combat trauma, right? And a lot of people on this channel can relate to trauma in general. But if I could overcome that, what's touching a cold metal bar and getting my workout in? It's nothing.
Right. It's nothing. And, you know, I have those memories. I wasn't in combat. I don't have that trauma. I have some memories that, you know, I don't come up for me very often. And I, you know, some of them I think were suppressed and then have gradually come up. I know anybody listening to this right now is listening because there's something that they've overcome. And I sometimes think of those very dark places where I have been. And we need to be able to hold that stuff. Like, when you're able to hold that stuff, you can hold this stuff. And the cold metal, the walking, you know, in the below freezing, you know, when the wind chill is 2 degrees out, that type of thing. Like, that's actually minor discomfort compared to true trauma. And you just do it. You
Yeah.
just do it.
Yeah. Well, what impresses me so much about you, Elizabeth, is one that you've developed a strong resiliency mentally, even if it means like, and let's say, for instance, I knew nothing about you.
Sure.
You still get on every single day and you post. And maybe
Yes.
some of your posts get millions and some of your posts get hundreds. It doesn't matter. That's not why you're doing it.
Right.
And that
Right.
to me is beautiful, because when you talk about feeling happy, healthy, and hot as a persona, then it doesn't matter if you have a hater online who makes some dumb comment. I mean, it makes me mad if I see it, but it doesn't matter, because you know that your worth is greater than anything else that's happening around you, and you can keep moving in whatever direction you choose to move in.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it really is. I just think there's so much power in showing up for ourselves in that consistency. So whatever it is, whether it's showing up online, showing up for the workout, in your freezing cold garage, any of these things, but it's showing up for ourselves consistently is just such a confidence boost, because we've always shown up for other people, whether it's, an employer, our friends, family. You show up for them, but we don't show up for ourselves. We tend to put our own needs on the back burner. And when you learn to actually, when you finally realize that when you feel, people say to me, you're so full of yourself. And I'm like, I am. And like, I hope that you're full of yourself too. Because when you're full of yourself, you have so much more to give. And one thing that I do that I like to share, I've shared with my audience a lot, and I'm going to share with your audience, I always say connect before you consume. So to connect with yourself before you start consuming social media, email, God forbid, the news, like to connect with yourself with whatever brings you peace, whatever fills you up, your spirituality, the gratitude, all of those things. And that can be as you're, for me, like I'm going out on this quiet walk and I'm either literally listing out loud, because there's nobody out there, things I'm grateful for, or I'm listening to something really positive that I've selected ahead of time. But I'm not scrolling Facebook or social media, Instagram, and seeing comments or anything like that. I'm filling myself up. And then I'm coming back and I'm doing some quick journaling. I'm getting in a workout. I'm going to get dressed, feed my, eat, get dressed before I look at social media. And then I can show up and start posting and engaging and doing all my things, but I need to fill myself up first.
I am so thankful that you have mentioned that aspect. I don't know that I have mentioned it enough on this channel, really. And I want to touch on that for a second. So connecting with self first. First things I do, I wake up in the morning, I say a prayer, and then I go to the gym in my garage and I get my workout in. Sometimes without music, sometimes with a podcast on where I can just listen to something. This morning it was Andrew Huberman talking about physiology, and I was like, I'm just absorbing this as I'm lifting.
Right.
But you also mentioned journaling, and maybe I'll just share this. I don't think I've ever shared this on my channel before, but I do a list, 3 things every single day that I am grateful for. Somebody once told me that what that does for our mental health, by just writing down 3 things we're thankful for, even if it's a hard day, does something good.
Okay, that's so funny that you said that. I have to grab something. I actually didn't even think I was going to talk about this, but I created a journal back in 2021 that I self-published on Amazon. It's the Happy, Healthy, and Hot Journal, but it's mindset, nutrition, and fitness. The first thing at the top so there's sections: happy, which is mindset. There's space, healthy, to track what you ate; hot, to track your workout, and just and then additional notes. The first thing under happy is 3 things I'm grateful for. So every single day, I ask everyone to list 3 things that they're grateful for, because it just brings you into the present moment and to learn, to appreciate. And for me, so many times, the first thing that I'm grateful for, I'm literally grateful for this moment. Like, I'll be like, I'm grateful for this moment. I've got my hot coffee. I came in from my walk. Like, I just take a moment. Usually my dog's there, like, snoring next to me. And I just take a moment just to appreciate, like, that moment of peace, of coming, getting up in the morning and feeling peace, because there were years that I didn't feel peace when I woke up in the morning.
Yeah.
So I truly, truly am grateful for that. And I'm aware of that moment every morning. And that's usually the first thing that I list.
And Elizabeth, for our audience, I didn't know that you did this. I didn't know that you created a journal. So I would have had no
Yeah.
concept that you were already involved in this.
No, that we didn't talk about. That was not staged. That's just it. Pure synchronicity.
Yeah, I love that. So when it comes to journaling, before I take some time to do some meditation each day, which usually happens in my early afternoon before my kids get back from school, I'll sit down and I'll even set a timer sometimes, and I'll say, okay, I don't want to overthink this. I'm just going to spend 5 minutes on this journal. And I just kind of write down some of the key things that I'm feeling for the day. One, because I like to track my mood. Ever since I was going through some depression and anxiety for several years, struggling with suppressed trauma and combat,
Yeah.
I've had to have an outlet, and sometimes it's journaling. And so I track my moods and I say, how am I doing today? What have I done differently? Did I eat something last night that is making my mood drop today? Or did I put too much emphasis on working out through the day, and I've drained myself of energy, and so now I'm low? And so this area of balance that I try to find, the only way I can really track it is if I keep track.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's great to do that afternoon check-in too. But that's why I'm big even on having people like write down what they eat. It's not so much about you have to track every single macro. You absolutely can, and it's nice to have a knowledge of that, but it's more about holding yourself accountable, being honest with yourself, and recognizing patterns so you can change them. Because then you start to notice, oh, wow, when I didn't get enough sleep, I really wanted sweets. And that's when I ended up, getting the bag of M&Ms or whatever. You just start to notice these patterns. And then when you awareness, that gives you the power to change them. But if you don't have that awareness, you're never going to change.
Yeah, and I'm a believer in change. One, I had a traumatic brain injury in Iraq, and I believe that our neural pathways can form new pathways around the damaged area, and we can live happy, healthy lives, but it takes work. This shoulder right here, I don't know if you can see the scar.
Yeah.
I had the full shoulder replaced after I was wounded. So this is all metal and plastic. And they said, you'll never be able to move it functionally. You'll never be able to work out. And I was like, that can't be true, because I believe in change. I talk about people who have struggled through trauma and they feel like they're stuck and they just can't get out of their own heads. I believe in change. I believe a person can rise above it.
Absolutely.
You've mentioned several times already in our discussion today, Elizabeth, about walking. There is so much strength that I get from just being outside, even on a cold day.
Oh, it's magical. It's so much more than fitness. I'm so passionate about getting outside and walking. Like, it helped me back, during 2020, like, just process a lot of emotions that started to, some stuff was stirred up, and that helped me process my emotions. It's nature. So nature sounds are very regulating to our nervous system. Bird sounds are a primal signal to our bodies of safety, because birds stop chirping and singing when there's dangerous conditions. So when you're out hearing nature, that's regulating your nervous system. The bird sounds are this primal signal to our bodies that helps get us into a more parasympathetic state. Like, there are just so many benefits to getting outside, right, regardless of the temperature, and just getting out there, and it's just magical for me. So for me, it's as much a mental and emotional thing as the physical workout.
I'm very curious about a statement you made earlier too about growing up vegetarian in your household, and thank goodness for your good mother teaching you proper nutrition at an era when the society started to go downhill in terms of processed foods. And then you mentioned that you now have gone back to eating meat. So can you talk to me about that transition and what took place?
Absolutely. Okay, so first of all, giant shout out to my parents. So, and they always have eaten meat. My parents are 89 and 90. They've been married 61 years. And my mom, as my mom said about my dad recently, I'm still crazy about them. So they're amazing. They live independently. They live on a farm. They live independently. My mom doesn't drive, but my dad drives. They are, they do their shopping, they cook, all of the things. They're phenomenal. So giant shout out to Skip and Marion. They did a good job with that, with my sister and I, and my sister Jen, who, you know, is also on this whole journey with me. She's someone else who has been through, I actually need to give her a shout out because she's been one of my biggest supporters, and she's been through the trauma of losing her husband to brain cancer, being left a widow with 2 teenage daughters and they're all thriving. And so they've overcome that. And then she had a very serious injury where she was told she would never walk normally again. And she's out getting her 10,000 steps a day and doing all the things a couple years later.
Oh, amazing.
So, yes.
Amazing.
So another resilient woman out there. She's 4 years younger. So, yeah, I made a choice to become a vegetarian when I was I think it was 11. And it was really just, I love the animals, you know, all the things. And I still ate eggs and some dairy. And over the years would transition. I mean, there were times where I added in a little fish, but other times where I was, you know, hardcore vegan. And during all of this, you know, I was always what I would consider like a healthy vegetarian. I wasn't eating junk. And my weight was always decent. You know, I was in reasonably good shape. I can say that I've seen, like, and I posted this picture not recently. I came across a picture of myself at the age of 22 in a black bikini. And I could put that next to a picture of me now in a black bikini. And my waist was a little smaller at 22 because I hadn't had 2 big babies. But and I worked out back then. I went to the gym for an hour every day. I walked an hour every day, and I swam laps a couple times a week. I have better muscle definition now at 58 than I did at 22.
Wow.
So
wow.
I attribute that to the way I eat, and just to the fact that I work out less, but I kind of, you know, I'm probably more consistent and I'm probably more efficient is what I would say. But I attribute a lot of it to the way I'm eating. So weight is probably exactly the same. So I was vegetarian all these years and always struggling with the cystic acne, some digestive issues, anxiety, which, I mean, obviously that wasn't just changing my diet helped the anxiety. That's not going to magically fix everything, but it was one step. So in a final effort I'd been on Accutane 3 times. I'd had every topical med, every oral antibiotic. I started cutting out all sugars, which I wasn't eating any processed sugar, but even the healthy vegan treats that I was eating made out of like dates and all kinds of stuff that were really sugary. I'd eat a lot of them and my anxiety would go up. And I cut out grains, which at that point were just like soaked and sprouted and so clean, but I cut that stuff out, and so that I would have something to eat other than vegetables and fruit, you know, and I was trying not to eat too much fruit at the time. I started adding animal protein back in. I started with eggs, then I went to some bone broth, and I was just looking at how can I keep this super high quality, because I fed my family meat this whole time, my children, my husband, so some grass-fed beef, and my acne started clearing up like almost overnight. This was my early 40s, and I just found it started to be so much easier to, again, it wasn't about losing weight, but like I started getting better muscle definition, and my mental clarity was better. Like I was getting that brain fog, and, you know, everyone says it's perimenopause. Well, it just went away, and I never had it. Now I'm 5 years post-menopause. No brain fog, and no, just to show your audience, certainly no menopause belly either.
Yeah.
So, and I just attribute so much of this to the way I eat very consistently. And I just say I prioritize protein and produce. So it's like I'm building it's real food. I build my meals around high quality protein, you know, meat, beef, fish, eggs. So I'm not as big on chicken and turkey, but, you know, those things too, shellfish, whatever. Fill in with fruits and veggies. It's not that those are the only things I ever eat. I drink coffee, you know, I'll have my chocolate from time to time, but I really don't eat the processed carbs because they just don't do me any favors.
Yeah.
And I don't digest them well, and I get bloated and uncomfortable. So, you know, I'm a little tough love sometimes. Like I'll say, you know, well, if you eat a lot of dough, you're going to look like dough. But I mean, it's just, that is what it is.
It is what it is right. You know, I think that's the hardest part. I've coached some people who are middle-aged men in fitness. And while I'm showing progress, maybe sometimes they aren't showing progress. Maybe in strength they are, but
Yeah.
not physiologically. And it really comes down to that 90% of fitness is related to nutrition.
It is.
And
Nobody wants to hear that. Yeah.
it's the hardest part, but it's also the most beneficial part, because when we talk
Yeah.
about the common plagues of our generation today, which is diabetes, it's directly linked to food, right?
Yeah.
Secondary, it's related to the lack of movement. But
Yeah.
if we talk about anxiety, depression, it's more generally related to our food and less about our environment. And
Yeah.
how do we convince people in this generation to pay attention more to what they're putting into their mouths as fuel that will make a difference between the gut and the brain connection?
Yeah, because that's a huge connection. And that's why what I think something that I know that I'm good at is simplifying things. So, happy, healthy, and hot. But that's why I just say prioritize protein and produce. Because the minute you give something a label, then it's all about, am I following the rules or not following the rules? Am I on or am I off? Or if people find ways to follow the rules but cheat, it's like, but kind of cheat. And it's just like, if you just make it that simple, and you build your meals around these protein dense foods that are real foods that we've been eating for forever and thriving on, without all these things that are going on in the world today, without all the disease. And you find, and then when you start eating that way, and you start noticing, like, wow, my stomach's like flatter, and I'm like in a better mood, and I'm not hangry. When I'm hungry, I'm genuinely hungry and I want to eat something, but I don't want to eat my arm. And I'm not looking for the first bag of like chips that I can rip open. When I'm hungry, I want some real food.
Yeah. Yeah, I went through that battle last night. I came back from helping my wife with a Valentine's Day event at church. And so my youngest son, who's 7 years old, he was dressed with his bow tie, and I had mine on, and we served all the ladies.
Oh,
And he was just the cutest. Anyway, I came home from that, but there wasn't much food left over for me to eat after the party had already eaten. So I came home
right.
and I was hungry, and I opened up the cupboard and I see some chips, and I was like, I haven't been eating chips, but the thought of chips sounded good to me. So I grabbed the bag, and then I was like, but I know how I'm going to feel in the morning when I wake up to go work out. And I'm like, I don't want to feel that heaviness.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah. And see, I think that's so powerful when you can think about, how do I want to feel tomorrow? So what could I do that would feel good? I've used this actually with some men and women to help them kind of make that shift, like when they get, especially people that struggle in the evenings, when when people tend to have the cravings, which magically when they start eating more protein, suddenly they don't have those cravings at night.
So true.
But I say, it's amazing. But I say, like, what could you eat that would feel good now and feel good tomorrow? Like, think about how you want to feel tomorrow, and then make a choice based on that. And you're still going to be satisfied. But like, so instead of the chips or the cookies or whatever it is, and especially, those things that you can't stop. There's so many things that once people start, they can't stop. They really are addictive. But, I find when I eat a big burger and like some broccoli and maybe a baked sweet potato, I don't want to keep eating everything. I'm satisfied. I'm nourished.
Yeah, that's an important piece. And so much of what you're talking about now is probably a learned behavior over time that you've put in place. But it sounds a lot
Mhm.
like intuitive eating, where your body almost tells you what you need to consume. So I'm like, oh, I'm hungry. And I look in there and I see different things, and I'm like, wait a second, what I really want is something that's of substance, some protein that makes me feel satiated. I don't
Right.
need a big meal right now. So
Yeah.
maybe I'll take a protein shake, or maybe I'll eat an egg or two egg whites or something that
I was gonna
just
say,
make
I
me
always have
feel.
hard-boiled. Yeah, hard-boiled eggs are the best go-to to have in the fridge for when you just like are hungry, but you don't want something big, because they really are so satisfying,
Yep.
and you don't want anything else. Like, you're like, oh, one or two of those, you're like, I'm good.
Yeah, that is so true. That is so true. Um, a lot of my audience today, Elizabeth, are people who have gone through some extreme trauma. And
Mhm.
the most often trauma is probably undealt with.
Yeah.
And I can talk about it from a veteran's point of view of being in an environment where there's an emergency situation, there's death and everything happening, sound, sights, everything, and we don't have time to process. We're still having to get out of this situation, so we bury it, we move on, we go on, and there really isn't time in a deployment really to process that stuff. It's not until we come home, and so there'll be people here who can relate to childhood trauma, motor vehicle trauma, chronic pain, and then the recurring depression, anxiety cycle that we hear about so frequently. As we get closer to the end of this interview, I'm very curious of what your advice would be to people who are currently stuck in a situation where they're struggling.
What I would advise, what my piece of advice coming from my heart right now is to find one or two very small actions that you could commit to doing every day to show up for yourself. So I'm not talking about some big program. I'm thinking maybe one of them a mindset, a mental thing, like making that listing 3 things you're grateful for, or saying a few positive affirmations out loud, and then one of them being more of a physical. Maybe it's if you can get out for a walk, to promise to commit to walking 10 minutes in the morning, something really, whatever it is, like things that are so small that no matter what comes up, you can do them. And I think it's great if you do them in the morning, because you and I both know that the way we start our day is going to set the tone for our day. When you've shown up for yourself in the morning, you feel good. So I would suggest them to find 2 very small actions they can commit to taking every day, preferably in the morning. And, it could be just listing in their head, even if they don't want to write it down, 3 things they're grateful for, and then getting out for a walk or, some type of movement. And commit to doing that, because first of all, that movement, when you commit to the movement, you really are moving that stuck energy, those stuck emotions. And, as I told you earlier, walking has helped me process some really raw stuff. We do need to feel those feelings, and we need to sometimes sit with them, but moving our bodies, and especially walking out in nature, I really think allows us to start to process and eventually release them. And I just commit to doing those small things and celebrating yourself for doing those. And maybe after a month, looking at, okay, how's this going? Cheering yourself on, celebrating yourself for doing it, and thinking, what would I like to, maybe I could listen to positive affirmations while I walk and make it even better. Or, what could I add one more thing? But just to take these really small actions and commit to doing them, and then celebrate that you're showing up for yourself. And that is I just feel like that movement, that action, committing to these things can be so powerful.
Yeah, it actually can save your life. It's important in our current phase of living where keeping promises isn't foremost in people's minds sometimes. And sometimes we fail ourselves and we don't keep our own promises. So exactly what Elizabeth has just mentioned, keeping the two promises to yourself. Today I'm going to do this, and I'm going to try to be consistent, and I'm going to try to make it a peaceful experience where we can process. I love that advice. Before we finish today, Elizabeth, I can't let you escape without talking about your current goals, which are absolutely incredible. Will you share those with us?
Absolutely. So as I am sharing this message with the world that it's time to tell a new story about aging, I feel the best way for me to do that, because I am big and bold. Well, I'm 5'1", so maybe not big, but I've got a big personality and a big message that I want to share with the world. So I'm currently running for Maxim Cover Girl 2025 at the age of 58, competing with women mostly in their 20s and 30s. And this is actually the 3rd time that I've done this. We know that third time's a charm.
That's right.
So the first 2 times, I made it to the quarterfinals. I made it to about the top 1% of the competition the last time I ran, which was last year. And at the very last minute, I was voted out and I didn't make it to the semifinals. Right after that, I would have gotten in front of the judges and had my opportunity. So this year we are going all in, And it is linked on my Instagram, on my Facebook, everywhere. My voting link, I'll share it with you, Michael. And people can log in. They get one free vote per day. And as you vote each day, you get to kind of see new things on my little page there. But if you believe that this, if you believe in my message, if you're someone inspired by this message, that it's time to tell a new story about aging and that we really get to decide what our life can look like and feel like no matter what our age is. Like, I'm 58 and I feel like I'm just getting started. Like, I feel like there's so much more ahead of me that I'm so excited about. So if this message resonates with anybody listening, I would be really honored if they would take a moment to vote for me and vote every day. And let's keep this momentum going, because there's still several more rounds to go before I get to the interview phase. So that is the goal.
I love it. And it's a message of hope that says we can recreate our story of what aging looks like in our generation.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
the sky's the limit, I'm only about 10 years behind you, and I'm creating that story for myself that says,
I love it.
I don't care if I'm almost 50, I'm going to try to look like I did or better than I did in my 20s and 30s.
You can, and you absolutely can. That's the thing.
Yep.
Once you have it's like this. I feel like it's this, like it's the secret, but it's not a secret. It's so easy to just, not easy, but it's simple. It's, as you said, it's the nutrition is 80-90% of it.
But they have to believe it.
But exactly. Well, like I always say, when people ask me how I have these abs at 58, and I would say it's like protein, planks, and positivity. So, it's the food, it's the workouts, but then it's believing that all this stuff is going to work, and knowing that you're doing it not just to look good, but to feel good. Like, we know now muscle is the organ of longevity. So, like, it's not just, people think it's, oh, you're just doing that to look good. Well, it feels great to look good, but it also, I feel good and I functional fitness. And this is all just keeping us healthier.
I've never heard that quote. Muscle is the organ of longevity.
So I can't take credit for that. I heard that from Dr. Gabrielle Lyon. She has done a lot of research on protein and muscle building and its anti-aging effects and all that. She published a book maybe a year or two ago that I read. That was a lot of the stuff we've already, like, you and I know this stuff, but she kind of puts, really puts the science behind it. But it's what we practice every day. But in it, she really, and if you think about it, so many times people end up in a nursing home literally because they can no longer get out of their chair. And I've seen that happen to people who were mentally completely sharp, stopped getting up and walking. And that's why they end up immobile. And then and then everything else goes downhill. So it's that simple, just moving our body, feeding ourselves the protein we need, that makes it so much easier to build that muscle. And it just makes everything better.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Elizabeth, your message today is so inspiring. You've given me so many additional thoughts that I've written down for my own life. I can't thank you enough for your positive messaging. I love what you're doing. I appreciate it, and I'm so glad to be connected with you. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. Well, you do the same, Michael. I'm so happy to be here and be a part of this, and we'll definitely keep in touch. And
yes.
I'm happy to come back anytime. So
love it. Love it.
It was a lot of fun.
Thank you.